A big weekend of
Oh
trades in
yeah.
the NBA, boys. Just monumental trades that just kind of blow your mind at, especially the Luca one. Let's jump into this. Where after a pair of big trades in the NBA this weekend, where do you see the Wolves fitting into the Western Conference now after clearly things were massively shaken up, Joe?
Well, I wrote about it on Timberwolves on SI last night. I was just kind of trying to mull through it all and thinking that, well, in my mind, the Mavericks definitely got better right now because Luka's not on the court, and they're going to be dangerous come playoff time if Derek Lively is healthy, and they've got those three bigs and PJ Washington to play elite defense. Still have great offense from Kyrie Irving, but I actually think the Lakers take a step backwards before they potentially take a big leap forward. I don't look at LeBron and Luca as something that's just going to fit seamlessly. I would think a more dangerous duo is Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, just because their games are a bit different. But they play the same way, and they'll have to figure that out in Los Angeles. And that is a defensive sieve of a basketball team without Anthony Davis. So I look at it right now, and if the Wolves can kind of shake off these injuries that they're dealing with, if Julius Randle's groin strain isn't a really long term thing and he comes back in the relatively near future, Dante DiVincenzo's big toe sprain wasn't season ending. We know he's coming back in a number of weeks, probably. We know that Nasri's finger sprain is not serious because he's questionable for Monday night's game. And Mike Conley's sprained thumb, he's already back from that. So overcome the bug that's going through the locker room. And the Timberwolves have been playing like one of the best offensive and defensive teams in the NBA since the calendar flipped to 2025. And I still think Minnesota is a top 4 or 5 team in the West. That said, we have a couple of months here to figure things out and some of these moves. And I really, really fear that De'Aaron Fox Wemby combination in San Antonio now. They've got some pieces to be a very scary first round playoff opponent if they can get in. I think they will. So, the West just got tougher. I think there's 12 teams in the West that we all think can compete and get into the postseason. It's going to be critical to have home court advantage in the first round. Minnesota is good enough to get that. I don't know. There's going to be no easy matchups though, guys. But I still do believe the Timberwolves are a little bit better than the Mavericks. I think they're better than the Lakers, and I still think they're a top 4 or 5 seed in the Western Conference after all of these massive trades. And by the way, we've got 4 days yet before this trade deadline passes. There's going to be more moving and shaking. What if Jimmy Butler ends up in Phoenix? They're instantly with Jimmy Butler, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. I'd imagine Bradley Beal's gone in that scenario, but instantly that trio is going to be considered one of the favorites to represent the West in the finals. So it could be a crazy week ahead.
Well,
Yeah, it's just gonna get. I mean, that's not gonna get more crazy because I think we've already peaked in the craziness department. That Luka trade was unbelievable. I'm out at a bar on Saturday night and it hit my phone, and I'm like, so Shams got hacked, right? Like he had to have been hacked. There's no way this is real.
I think my favorite part of that is that he had to tweet out several times.
Yeah, he
This
was
is
like,
real,
yeah,
guys. This is
is
real.
real. And then even after he tweeted that, I'm like, oh, that's what a hacker would say to make sure, try to get people to believe it. It wasn't until
NBA
I saw.
Centel.
It wasn't until I saw other people actually confirming it that I was like, oh my God, they actually did that. And still, now 2 days later, I still have no fathomable idea what the Dallas Mavericks are doing there. But yeah, for the immediate kind of future, I agree that Dallas, I think, is fairly scary. Anthony Davis has a reputation of not playing in a ton of games, but he's actually been pretty healthy the last few years, and he's been very, very good. This has been one of the best years of his career this year. I know he turns 32 soon, but that'll be a dangerous team. And then for the Lakers, it's less about this year than it is about the future. But in the immediate future, they need to find a way to trade for a center because right now they've got Jackson Hayes and nobody else there at the 5. And then, I mean, I think the Mavericks might need to make another trade too, because Kyrie Irving is now really their only kind of ball handler, shot creator, playmaker. And they've got this overload of big men with Davis and Derek Lively, who's been hurt, and Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington. So we'll see the other moves that are still to come. Could be something with Jimmy Butler happening. But the overall takeaway, I think, is just the Western Conference continues to be just so crazy and so far ahead of the East. And Zach LaVine going from Chicago to Sacramento doesn't like really change the power balance, but players even of that caliber never seem to go the other way. They always seem to be coming from the East to the West. If Jimmy Butler comes from the East to the West, that would be a bigger deal in terms of the balance of power right now. But yeah, the West is just stacked. I mean, the Spurs, I don't know if they're even in the play-in right now. You've got the Warriors are out of the play-in. There are 12 plus teams in this conference that have a lot of talent, and I think the Spurs and the Lakers are going to be scary in the future with these trades. As of right now, I do still think the Wolves are probably a top 5, top 6 team in talent in the West, but they're gonna have to they got some tough games coming up in a little bit this month, and it's going to be a very, very hotly contested race for those 6 spots to avoid the play-in.
Tony?
Yeah, I mean I kind of agree with what both Joe and Will said. It's I think both of those moves with Fox to the Spurs and Luka to the Lakers, I think it's almost more future outlook for both those teams. I do agree the Spurs can be a little dangerous this year if they are able to sneak in, but that's a move 3 to 5 years down the road that they're going to be at the top of the West, and we all know Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves. That's a really odd pairing when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. And I'm definitely immediately this year, I think that's just a liability, and they still have a lot of holes on that roster in the front court at center, like Will said. So I think both those moves definitely shake things up. But I just don't know if we're going to see the impact of both of them this year in the playoff race, but definitely more in the future.
When looking at how these trades impact the Western Conference and where the Wolves stand right now, 7th place, 12 games back of first, 1 game back of the Clippers in 6th, 2 games back of the Lakers in 5th, though a game and a half above the Suns in 8th place. Do these trades put pressure on the Wolves to make a move at the deadline? I know we've talked over the past couple weeks that it seems very unlikely with their cap situation, the second apron status, and what little they can actually do in the trade market. Does these moves put pressure on the Wolves to make a trade before Thursday's deadline?
I actually think there's less pressure than ever. You look at all the mixing and matching going on, and the Timberwolves just went through this like sinking period where they had to figure things out for a couple of months. Now they've got it figured out. If they can get healthy, like I mentioned, they're going to be very dangerous down the stretch. All these other teams that are making these giant moves are going to have to learn how to play together on the fly. And that's not going to be something that's easy to do. As we saw, Julius Randle had very limited training camp and preseason before getting ready to play in his first season with the Timberwolves. And then at the same time, who's going to trade for Julius Randle in the next, 96 hours when he has a groin strain? I think that's a significant thing. And there's really nobody else on the roster, if you're Minnesota, that you're really looking to move unless you're trying to shed like a little bit of salary to be a facilitator in a bigger multi-team trade. So you're not trading Jaden McDaniels. I think he's basically been labeled as off limits by Tim Connolly in the past. And the way he's played lately, you should indicate to everybody that you don't want to trade a guy like that when he's operating as, he's kind of like I don't want to say Ben Wallace or Dennis Rodman, but kind of that, not the rebounding of those guys, but he's got that feisty edge where he has that ability to absolutely take guys out of games on the defensive side of the ball. You don't want to trade that. I mean, he's a very important piece when it comes to big time playoff basketball. So I actually think it's much less likely that they make a move now than ever before. And, if they did anything, I think it'll be very minor. I think they're going to look at the situation and say, guys, we know what we're doing. All these teams are ripping on the fly now. This puts us in the driver's seat. We're one of the top contenders in the West. Let's roll. Let's roll with what we have. And everything that John Krasinski and Chris Finch and everybody else has said in the recent weeks, the people you can actually trust, is that this is an internal mission. They're going to build from within and improve from within. So I don't expect anything to happen. And if it does, it might be a bit of a crazy scenario here in Minnesota too. And you never know. You just never know.
Yeah, never had any idea that Luka Doncic was going to get traded, which I think just reinforces the notion that anything is possible. I do think it is very, very much likely that the Wolves don't do anything at this deadline, or if they do, it's something very minor. The Julius Randle injury, I think, complicates that piece of it, and the potential for him to even be involved in some 3-4 team Jimmy Butler mega deal, Bradley Beal, because Randle, with his All NBA pedigree and his salary, would make sense perhaps as a piece to go in a deal like that, but just the injury, I think, complicates that. I do think what some of the plugged in Wolves reporters have said, where if they're going to trade him, they really wanted to get something of value back for him. I think that becomes harder when you're talking about moving a guy who's been injured. And I guess I don't know how serious that is, if we're talking a week or closer to a month or something like that. But I think it'll probably be a quiet deadline for the Wolves. I think the hierarchy in the West is still what it was prior to these trades, where it's OKC absolutely clearly number one and the favorites, but still not to any sort of peak Warriors point or peak Spurs or anything like that, because OKC hasn't done it yet in terms of this core making a deep playoff run. They absolutely deserve to be the favorites, but I mean, if you're Memphis, you're like, we can beat OKC in a 7-game series. Our core with Ja and Jaren and Bane, we've done it before, and we've won some playoff series. And the Rockets are another team that hasn't done it, but they're going to go in feeling confident. The Nuggets are a team that has done it. They're going to be right there. I think those are clearly the top four, and that's the top four in the standings right now. And then you've got a interesting mix of the next teams, where the Lakers in 5, I do think after trading Anthony Davis, they probably end up in the play-in. And Luka and LeBron, like, assuming Luka's healthy soon, there are going to be times where that is ridiculously fun to watch on the offensive end of the floor, and they both have a triple-double in the same game, and they are showing off some chemistry that I don't think it'll take long for them to build, but they need a center. Defensively, it's going to be a question. It feels like they might slip into the play-in. And then the Clippers are interesting. Like, it's hard to trust Kawhi Leonard to fully stay healthy. It's tough to know exactly what's going to happen with that team. So I think the Wolves have a pretty good chance to get past one or both of those LA teams and be out of the play-in. But then, yeah, Phoenix, Dallas, I mean, even the Spurs, the Kings, like there are teams that are going to make this a fight for those spots to avoid the play-in. I guess I got one off the wall question here, but if the Mavericks would have called Tim Connolly and said, "We'll trade you Luka for Ant," would you have done that?
No.
I agree.
No, you don't trade the guy who gets compared to Michael Jordan. And you don't trade him for the guy who has upset an organization because he doesn't take his nutrition seriously. I mean, that's what everybody says, right? That's what everybody in Dallas and every one of the national reporters is, that the Mavericks were upset because, they're worried about a 25-year-old guy who's going to get a $345 million mega contract if he stays in Dallas, taking his own personal health seriously. And the ability to stay healthy over the course of a season as you age gets difficult. And if you're not taking care of yourself in LeBron-like fashion, why pay a guy like that? So I get it from Dallas's end. Obviously, it's stupid to just call the Lakers and be like, hey, let's swing a deal and not tell the rest of the league. That's dumb.
Yeah,
they could have got so much more.
That's the part I don't get. You could have.
That's the conspiracy, Will.
You could have ransomed Luka Doncic and gotten a minimum of 5 firsts. Actually, I don't know if you can trade more than that, but
no.
You could have gotten 5 firsts. You could have gotten a young star player, like multiple young assets.
Yeah. This is Adam Silver, who looks like a reptilian, pulling the strings. He's Wizard of Oz. This is what I'm telling you, man. This is the Wizard of Oz pulling the strings to make Luka Doncic go to LA and put him in the biggest, most popular basketball market for the next 10 years amid declining NBA ratings. He looks like a reptilian.
I'm not buying the conspiracy. I think it was just a very, very dumb move from the Dallas Mavericks. I will say this might sound crazy to Minnesota people, but I mean, I would have traded Anthony Edwards for Luka Doncic. The guy, He has made 5 first-team All-NBAs at 25 years old. Nobody has ever done that before. He is.
Yeah, I mean he's phenomenal, but he
is
doesn't play defense.
he is ridiculously good. I think there is a chance that Ant could get to that level someday, but he's not there right now by any means. And I don't know. I think Luka is going to. He is a furious competitor. As I was at that game just in May when he crossed over Rudy Gobert and sunk the shot, and then yelled some choice words at him afterwards. I think this dude is going to be so motivated by this and by what Dallas has said about his conditioning and whatnot that he's just gonna become an absolute monster in LA and give the Mavericks 50 and 15 every time he plays them. So I would have done that. But with that being said, Ant's my favorite Wolves player of all time, and I love watching him. So I'm glad that didn't happen, I suppose. But it's just crazy to think that, like, how Mavs fans are feeling right now is how we would have had to been feeling and processing if the Wolves had just traded Ant out of nowhere. And it's hard to even wrap your mind around that possibility.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
I think when it comes to the Timberwolves' perspective in this whole thing, I think they've already made their big move with Cat, obviously. I think in the NBA the last 2 years now, we've seen how important I think chemistry is. And with the LeBron era, when he was on the Heat and the Cavs, everyone I think kind of thought that you just treat the NBA like you're playing 2K My GM and just get as many good players as possible. But I think with both the Nuggets and Celtics in the last 2 years, like, they have homegrown talent and they develop their talent, and it's team chemistry and it's coaching, and it's not this just get a bunch of stars on a team and hope it works. And I think the Timberwolves, they made their move getting Cat out, and they want to build this talent. They want Nas to develop. They want Nickeil Alexander-Walker to develop. And I think they just need to keep that rolling and let the dust settle around them. And I foresee that being the most likely scenario with how they approach this trade deadline.
Let me say something real quick here, just about this whole landscape of the NBA. Everybody laughed at the Timberwolves when they went in on the two bigs with Cat and Gobert. And now you see what's happening. You saw the success in the playoffs and the defensive mentality. Look what the Mavericks are choosing to do. They're choosing to go extremely big. They're choosing to trust Anthony Davis, saying, I won a championship when I was the power forward and I had a great defensive center next to me. And then you have, obviously, an all-time great point guard in Kyrie Irving to balance things out. And then you look at the Memphis Grizzlies and how good and dangerous they are. It's kind of a similar dynamic there where they go out and draft Zach Edey with the 9th overall pick. And Edey's kind of this Bill Laimbeer-like enforcer who goes up to Ja Morant mid-game and asks if somebody's bothering him. You know, Jaren Jackson and Zach Edey's a tremendous 1-2 punch with the bigs. The Timberwolves not only went against the grain, but they convinced some of the best teams in the league to follow a similar track. How is that for a 360 when you go from being ripped to creating the mold for what maybe the most advanced teams are doing right now? So we can rip Nico Harrison all we want for not testing the waters to see what he could get, but Dallas has a chance to be very, very good.
Dallas has to do it like this year though, or next year. That's the crazy part of this to me is,
well, Kyrie could opt out. Yeah,
I know. Kyrie's what, 33? AD is about to be 32. Yeah. If they don't win a title in the next 2 years, I mean, I think this is going to go down as one of the worst moves in NBA history, the history of sports. I don't see a way it works out unless, I suppose, they somehow find a way to win a title in one of the next 2 seasons, which I just don't see happening. It is one of the more mind-boggling things that I've ever encountered, not only in sports but just like in
by
general.
the way, here's the other part about going big in the modern game. You have to play Boston, and they're going to stretch you out and destroy you. Mm-hmm. So good luck, Dallas, if you have a rematch in the finals.
Coming back a little bit more home, a little bit more recently, the Wolves losing to the Wizards, breaking their own little win streak. Wizards breaking their 16-game losing streak in a 105-103 game on Saturday. Does that loss give you any concern about this team? Did it kind of break the little high that we were going on after the Wolves pulled off a number of victories in a row, Joe?
No, because it was a G League roster because everyone was hurt or sick. Anthony Edwards was out. You know, everybody who looks at that game and is worried about a loss there should be ashamed of themselves. They should go lock themselves in the closet for like a whole day, do a little darkness retreat, come back out, refresh and refocused, and then come to the realization that the point they missed was that we all got to see old man basketball at its finest. Joe Ingles at LA Fitness doing what he does, putting guys on the floor all over the place, passing, stealing, rebounding, hitting threes. It was like a magician out there. And Joe Ingles satisfied all of my needs on Saturday night, and that's how everybody should feel about that game. And if you have any other takeaway, you're a fool.
Yeah,
All right, guys, have a different takeaway. Good luck.
Thankfully, I only watched the last few minutes of that game, and I think the only question is like, should Chris Finch have gone back to Rob Dillingham at some point down the stretch for a little more shot creation? Because I'm watching the closing minutes. I'm like, who's going to go get you a bucket here? Like Jaden, Nikhil? I would have liked to have seen Rob get another chance, but granted, I hadn't watched any of Rob's minutes in the game up to that point. Yeah, I'm not concerned about it. It's frustrating to lose to a team that was 6-41 and one of the worst ever, especially at home, no matter what the circumstances are. But no Ant, no Julius, no Dante. Nas leaves the game. It happens. Do we know if Zach LaVine is making his Sacramento Kings debut this evening? I would guess
don't know,
maybe
but that's
not,
big because their starting lineup is great. I love it. It's Malik Monk at point guard. If LaVine
they have three
plays,
shooting
he's
guards.
two. Yeah, no, DeMar DeRozan. You've got Keegan Murray, and then Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah,
they have no depth. So this is a good night for Minnesota to take advantage of that lack of depth, especially if LaVine doesn't play. But yeah. It is what it is. We'll see.
Tony, concern factor after the loss? None or a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. When you have an 82-game regular season, it's just hard to have strong opinions on every result, and especially when half your team's out for whatever reason. And it's not a scheduling loss, but it's just like some of those games are just bound to happen, especially the way the Wolves have been rolling this season, that it's been up and down. And if you have a strong reaction from that game, I think it's just overreacting.
What are you trying to say about my Joe Ingles take?
I like the take, but I don't know how much of an impact that really has on anything.
No, it was a one-off. Yeah, you're right. And by the way, Kyle Kuzma was pulling Kobe Bryant moves out of his bag late in that game, that never happens. Come on, that was just a confluence of events. It's just luck of the draw, man. They got hot on the right night against a team that had nobody.
That's just the NBA's, I guess, issue right now is that game kind of felt like it was just virtually pointless in the grand scheme of things. And
exactly.
It seems like there's a lot of those games.
All right. Sticking on the trade front, going back to the trade front, but switching sports here. NFL, Myles Garrett, star pass rusher for the Cleveland Browns, reportedly requesting a trade away from Cleveland. And that got us thinking before the show, what would that look like in Minnesota? What would it take to get here? And we all kind of pulled together a trade, just kind of spooling it out of our, just brainstorming here. And I think we came up with a first rounder, Dallas Turner, and Jordan Addison for Myles Garrett. Now you've had 25 minutes to think about it. Would you do it?
I haven't thought about that at all.
Would you do that? Because Diana Rossini, while we were recording here, tweeted out one NFL GM on what a trade for Myles Garrett could look like. Probably a first round plus something else. Probably a 1 and a 2, a 1 and 2 threes, throw a player in there. It's kind of what we've got a little bit. I mean, you're trading a couple of star players. I think we might have gone overboard a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was going to. We might have gone too far, just given the theoretical lack of leverage the Browns have when a star player requests a trade, given the kind of contract that he's on. I don't know the exact details there, but I imagine he's making a absolute large amount of money. So maybe it's just one of those two, Addison or Turner. Addison obviously being a lot more
Pick
proven.
Your poison there.
Turner
choose who you'd want. Who would you take out of that trade?
Well, I'd rather keep Jordan Addison because I actually know he's good. I don't know if Dallas Turner is going to be good. He might be. If it was Dallas Turner, this year's first, and then like a 2026 third. I mean, I might do it. I don't know. I to be very clear, I think that it's an interesting exercise. I think there's like a 0.03% chance that the Vikings trade for Myles Garrett, but in a world where Luka Doncic gets traded to the Lakers, who knows? I guess.
Myles Garrett's
Um,
contract over the next couple of years, a cap hit of 19.7 million in 2025, 20.3 in 2026, and then 6 void years after that, starting in 2027 with a $40.9 million cap hit in 2027.
okay, so
That's cheap, man.
they
That's
pushed a
cheap
lot
on
into
the
the
grand
future.
scheme. Yeah, I would do. I mean, if you look at the Vikings and you
5
and you
void
try
years.
to think, you think about the championship window being open. I mean, you're crazy not to investigate that, right? You're crazy not to throw an offer at the Browns. You at least have to pick up the phone and say, hey, old boss guy, this is Quasey. I used to work for you, Andrew Barry. Let's swing a deal here. Help me out. What do you need? I mean, you have the cap space to sign him to a long-term extension if you wanted to. You could restructure his deal. I mean,
You
we
don't
really
have
don't need
the
to
thing is
because
you
those
don't have a
cap
lot
hits
of
aren't that bad.
right. The thing is you don't have a lot of draft capital this year. So if you're trading your first this year, you're left with what? A third in comp picks, and then 2/5, I believe, is what it
Yeah,
is off
I,
the top of my head.
you'd have
yeah, I don't
basically
care.
nothing this year.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But you're
You
giving
just
up
scrap the
the 24th pick in this year's draft essentially for Myles Garrett.
Have
I
it.
think that's a win.
Oh my God, yeah. You got the best pass rusher in the NFL, arguably. I mean, that's incredible. I
But do
mean,
the Vikings really need I know Myles Garrett's
yeah,
really, really freaking good, but we've already got a ton of pass rushers. Like that's like the one position on defense that they don't need any more help in.
you can't have enough pass rushers. What if Jonathan Goddard or Andrew Van Ginkel
That's
got
fair.
hurt? I mean, you got to have something behind them who can play a 3-down defensive end like Myles Garrett. I mean, generational talent we're talking about here again. I don't know why people would be avoiding that in any way, shape, or form. You
30
absolutely
he'll be
pick up
30
the
years
phone.
old this year.
Great. 30 years old with 3 years left on his deal or whatever it is. In your championship windows, what, 3 to 5 years? Come on.
You know what?
Myles
I
Garrett.
just thought the Vikings would just trade Justin Jefferson for Myles Garrett would be the comp of the Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis trade, which is to say they should never do it in a million years. But like,
Yeah, don't do that.
I still can't wrap my head. They traded Luka Doncic. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
Jefferson for Garrett's a really good comparison.
It kind of works, doesn't it? Age wise,
Yeah.
offense, defense,
And even what they bring to the table, like Jefferson's an offensive machine, like Doncic is, and then Anthony Davis is a all NBA defender who probably deserves some of Rudy Gobert's Defensive Player of the Year awards, and Garrett's high end Defensive Player of the Year caliber edge rusher. So I would love to see that happen. I mean, you can't look at Jonathan Goddard and
not
Andrew
the
Van
Justin
Ginkel and
Jefferson
say,
part. I'm assuming
we don't need him. No. Whoa, no. You give up your first round pick and then, Dallas Turner, whatever. I don't care. Future third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever. Just you give it up. You get a proven player. Great. Championship window. Let's go. Let's dominate.
Garrett and Grenard would be pretty insane.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Absolutely.
And Van Ginkel can play he can play enough different spots that you could play all three of those guys.
You'd be fine. Brian Flores
Yeah.
would figure it out. Yeah.
Brian Flores with that kind of pass rushing trio. Oh boy. Buckle up, NFC North.
Yeah. Still go get yourself a Dexter Lawrence, though. Let's not forget
Yes,
about
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
You need somebody in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. They have the cap space. They don't have the draft capital, but as we said, giving up the 24th pick for Myles Garrett plus maybe another high-end prospect, I think I'd do it. Tony, we didn't hear your opinion on this. Would you do it?
Yeah, I mean, for I guess both reasons that Joe and Will said, it seems unlikely on the surface, but you got to at least throw an offer out there, kind of the same way that it's just so shocking what the Mavericks did when you're trading a future Hall of Famer, which Myles Garrett is. You have to pursue all avenues and you have to listen to all the offers. And in the Vikings scenario, like Joe said, when you have this window, why not throw an offer out there? It might seem stupid to give up all your draft capital this year, but that defense would be scary if you add Myles Garrett to Grenard and Van Ginkel, and then if you're even able to keep Dallas Turner. We see with the Eagles the last couple of years and the Chiefs, it's just defensive line and dominating the trenches is how you win big time football games, and you never can have too much talent on either side of the offense or defensive line.
Agreed. Good stuff from you guys today. Appreciate it. Do be sure to hit subscribe to the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. It does help us get found. Also notifies you every time we post a new video here on the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. We'll talk to you tomorrow or Wednesday with another topic across the Minnesota sports. Talk to you later.